Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a topic that has caught the attention of the global political and military community, the real reason Sweden scares Vladimir Putin right now. While many might assume that Sweden, a relatively small European nation, doesn't hold much influence over Russian strategy, the reality is far more complex and alarming from Moscow's perspective. The developments in Sweden over the past few years, particularly regarding its defense strategy and its growing alignment with NATO, have caused ripples in the Kremlin, making analysts wonder why such a move is raising tensions. Sweden's position in Europe has always been unique. Historically neutral, it maintained a stance of military non-alignment for decades. However, the geopolitical landscape of Europe has dramatically shifted, particularly since Russia's aggressive moves in Ukraine in 2014 and then the full-scale invasion in 2022. These actions have prompted Sweden to rethink its security posture. What was once a policy of cautious neutrality is now evolving into a proactive defense strategy. This shift is not just about bolstering Sweden's own security, it sends a message across the continent that even historically neutral nations are willing to strengthen ties with Western alliances when threatened. The most significant factor that alarms Putin is Sweden's NATO ambitions. For decades, Sweden avoided formal military alliances, preferring independent security strategies. However, the aggression shown by Russia in Ukraine has fundamentally changed that approach. Swedish policymakers, along with public opinion, have increasingly supported joining NATO. The reasoning is straightforward. Sweden cannot afford to remain isolated while a resurgent Russia demonstrates its willingness to violate international norms. For Putin, the idea of NATO expanding to include Sweden is a strategic nightmare, not merely a political inconvenience. It places Western military capabilities much closer to Russia's borders. Additionally, Sweden has been quietly enhancing its military capabilities over the past decade. Its defense budget has steadily increased, focusing on modernizing its armed forces and investing in advanced technology. Sweden's military is highly capable for a country of its size, with well-trained personnel, advanced air defense systems, and strategic coastal defenses. Moreover, Sweden has invested in cybersecurity and intelligence capabilities, areas that are critical in modern warfare. This combination of high-tech defense and strategic positioning makes Sweden a formidable neighbor, especially from the perspective of the Kremlin. Another aspect that makes Sweden particularly concerning for Russia is its geographic location. Sweden sits in a critical position in Northern Europe, controlling access to the Baltic Sea. The Baltic region is of immense strategic importance to Russia, both for military and economic reasons. A Sweden aligned with NATO complicates Russian access and increases the risk of potential NATO operations in areas that Russia considers vital to its security. The presence of NATO forces in Sweden could provide early warning systems, air defense coverage, and naval support, all of which limit Russia's operational freedom in the region. Sweden's modern military partnerships also add to Putin's concern. The country has been actively collaborating with Finland, the United States, and other European nations in joint military exercises and intelligence sharing. These partnerships are designed not only to strengthen Sweden's own defense, but also to create an integrated security framework that can respond rapidly to threats. For Russia, this network defense system represents a significant shift from the days when Sweden was largely isolated and neutral. The interconnectedness of Sweden's defense with NATO means that any aggressive move in the region could trigger a swift collective response, reducing Russia's strategic flexibility. public opinion within Sweden has also shifted dramatically in favor of stronger defense policies. The Swedish population, once hesitant about alliances and military build-up, now broadly supports NATO membership and increased defense spending. This reflects a societal recognition of the risks posed by a more aggressive Russia. The Kremlin, watching these developments, sees a growing domestic consensus that is unlikely to be swayed by intimidation or propaganda. This resilience in Swedish society, combined with governmental commitment, represents a challenge to Russian influence in the region. Cybersecurity and information warfare are another dimension where Sweden poses a challenge to Russia. Sweden has been investing heavily in protecting its digital infrastructure, understanding that modern conflicts extend beyond traditional battlefields. Russian cyber operations in Europe have been aggressive, targeting both governmental and civilian networks. Sweden's enhanced cyber defense, along with its collaboration with NATO allies, reduces the Kremlin's ability to leverage cyber attacks as a means of coercion or destabilization. This further adds to the frustration in Moscow, as traditional asymmetric methods are less effective against a nation that is prepared and coordinated. Energy security is yet another subtle but critical factor. Sweden has prioritized sustainable energy sources, reducing dependence on fossil fuels imported from Russia. While this may seem like an economic policy, it has significant geopolitical implications. Russia has historically used energy as a tool of influence over European nations. By decreasing reliance on Russian energy, Sweden weakens one of the Kremlin's strategic levers. For Putin, this represents a broader trend in Europe that is eroding Russia's influence, and Sweden's example may inspire neighboring countries to pursue similar independence. Sweden has also been active in intelligence gathering and sharing, often in cooperation with other Western nations. The country has highly capable intelligence services that provide valuable insights into regional military movements. This level of surveillance and intelligence sharing strengthens NATO's situational awareness and diminishes Russia's ability to maneuver unnoticed. For a Kremlin accustomed to operating in a relatively opaque Northern European environment, Sweden's transparency and readiness to share intelligence is deeply unsettling. Additionally, Sweden's commitment to rapid mobilization and territorial defense has been a game changer. The country has developed a system that allows for swift deployment of forces in case of a threat. Unlike in the past, when neutral countries relied on slower, defensive strategies, Sweden now emphasizes readiness and the ability to respond quickly to incursions. This agility in defense planning complicates any potential Russian calculations, making aggressive moves far riskier. Sweden's modernization efforts also include investment in advanced air and missile defense systems. These capabilities provide a robust shield against potential aerial threats and make the Swedish airspace a challenging environment for any adversary. For Russia, which relies heavily on air and missile capabilities for strategic advantage, this development represents a significant deterrent. It means that any attempt to project power into the region would face formidable resistance, potentially altering Russian military planning entirely. Another key element is Sweden's focus on joint operations with Finland. The two countries share long borders and have similar security concerns. Their cooperation includes joint exercises, coordinated defense planning, and strategic intelligence sharing. Together, they form a Northern European security belt that complicates Russian maneuvers in the region. The synergy between Sweden and Finland is a clear signal to the Kremlin that the Baltic region is no longer an easy arena for unilateral Russian influence. Political signaling also plays a crucial role. Sweden's statements on international law, territorial integrity, and the importance of collective security are deliberate and strategic. By openly criticizing Russian aggression and supporting Ukraine, Sweden positions itself as a firm advocate of rules-based international order. These messages, though diplomatic in tone, serve as psychological deterrents, signaling to Russia that aggressive actions will not go unchallenged. For Putin, this creates a perception that Sweden is not only militarily prepared, but also politically determined to resist intimidation. The psychological aspect cannot be ignored. Russia has historically relied on its reputation to intimidate smaller nations. Sweden's assertiveness in defense and international diplomacy undermines that perception. It demonstrates that small nations, when well prepared and strategically aligned, can resist pressure from a larger, aggressive neighbor. This shift in psychological dynamics is particularly threatening to Putin, who calculates risk not only based on military strength, but also on perceived compliance from other nations. Economic resilience adds another layer of concern. Sweden maintains a strong economy capable of supporting sustained defense investments without destabilizing the nation. This economic strength ensures that Sweden can maintain and modernize its military over the long term, unlike some countries that may struggle with resource constraints. For Russia, facing a well-funded and capable neighbor is far more intimidating than confronting a state with limited economic and military potential. Sweden's international collaborations extend beyond NATO and Europe. The country engages in strategic partnerships across the globe, participating in joint research, defense technology development, and intelligence exchange programs. These global connections increase Sweden's resilience and capacity to respond to threats, and they also embed the country in a network of nations that can exert diplomatic and military pressure if needed. From a Russian perspective, this reduces the likelihood of successfully isolating Sweden or applying unilateral pressure. The public commitment to territorial defense is visible in Sweden's citizen training programs and military reserves. The nation emphasizes a culture of readiness where ordinary citizens can contribute to national defense in emergencies. This creates a force multiplier effect, allowing Sweden to mobilize more effectively in times of crisis. For Russia, this approach transforms the strategic equation. Any potential invasion or coercion would encounter a society prepared to resist actively. Sweden's emphasis on technology is also crucial. The country invests heavily in innovation for defense purposes, including advanced radar systems, drones, and cyber defense tools. These technological advancements give Sweden an edge in monitoring and responding to threats, creating an environment where traditional military advantages are harder to leverage. For the Kremlin, a technologically sophisticated Sweden reduces the effectiveness of conventional military strategies, forcing Russian planners to reconsider their options. Cultural and political alignment with Western democracies further isolates Russia. Sweden embodies a model of governance and international cooperation that contrasts sharply with Russia's authoritarian approach. This alignment increases Sweden's soft power influence in Europe and strengthens alliances that can collectively respond to Russian aggression. It's not just military capabilities that worry Putin, it's the broader strategic environment that Sweden helps to shape. Finally, the symbolic impact of Sweden joining NATO and strengthening its defenses cannot be overstated. For Russia, The image of a once neutral nation actively resisting intimidation is deeply troubling. It challenges narratives of Russian dominance and emboldens other nations to reconsider their security policies. Sweden's actions resonate far beyond its borders, affecting regional stability and global perceptions of Russian power. In conclusion, Sweden scares Putin not because of sheer size or population, but because of a combination of strategic location, military modernization, intelligence capabilities, public resolve, and international alliances. The country's proactive stance, coupled with growing integration into NATO and enhanced defense readiness, transforms it from a neutral observer into a formidable player in Northern European security. For Russia, this means a more complicated, riskier strategic environment where options for unilateral action are significantly reduced. Sweden's transformation represents a broader shift in European security dynamics. Smaller nations, when well prepared and strategically aligned, can influence the decisions of much larger powers. Putin's concern is a reflection of the changing balance in Europe, where cooperation, modernization, and proactive defense create deterrence without the need for aggression. Sweden's rise as a credible military and political actor demonstrates that strategic foresight and investment in national resilience can have far-reaching consequences for global power calculations. As Europe continues to adapt to the challenges posed by Russian aggression, Sweden stands as a prime example of how nations can navigate threats and maintain sovereignty through preparedness, alliances, and innovation. Kremlin's worry is not merely about immediate military capabilities. It is about the precedent Sweden sets, the alliances it strengthens, and the message it sends to other nations. The real reason Sweden scares Putin is that it embodies a modern, resilient, and assertive approach to security, one that significantly limits Russia's freedom of action and reshapes the strategic landscape in Northern Europe.